All right, welcome back.
Welcome back. We got a story from r slash no sleep here from Pentyworth223. He's letting us use his story for this video today.
That was pretty
Credit to
cool.
that
We
guy.
talked to him. Seemed like a super nice guy,
Yep.
and just letting us use his stuff. So helps us
Yep.
out, and we really appreciate it. So we're gonna dig into it here.
I was alone in a Smoky Mountains fire lookout. Something was practicing how to be human. I wasn't supposed to be out there alone. That's what the training officer told me anyway, when he handed me a laminated packet labeled Temporary Lookout, Dry Season Protocol, and slapped my shoulder like I'd just volunteered for something heroic. The Smokies were seeing their driest July in over a decade. Creeks pulled their ribs close and went quiet, leaves crisped at the edges. Even the rocks felt warm to the touch if you sat with them past noon. We had two or lightning sparked spot fires already. Both killed quick by crews who humped hose up trail with that zero complaint look that comes from doing it too long. Cameras. Kirk, camera yours, he said. 2 weeks straight, you'll do fine.
So does that say camera or is it camera?
Camera. I'm guessing it's some like fire lookout term. I
Yeah,
fucked it a little bit.
it's okay. You hike to Mount Camera Lookout from Cosby, low gap up to the AT, and along Camera Ridge at bright boned path laid on the thin soil. Thin and spur trail out to the stone octagon the CC laid in the late 30s. The old guys like to talk about it. How they hauled sand by the mule in the water by hand. How the stones don't fit so much as interlock. How the windows look easy like eyelids. How within its storms the place feels like a ship in a gray bottle. There's a USGS brass cap set in the rock a few yards south of the porch, scratched with boot heels and weather stamped with the elevation of 4,928, sharp enough to catch a glint at noon. On the climb, I passed the battered, low gap 2.9 place card? Say play card?
Placard.
Placard. Placard. Placard. The one with the little bullets. It looks so messed up. Hang on, can you zoom in on that?
Little bullet crease.
Crease.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me. Boom. Oh, it's too much. There you go.
The little bullet crease in the top right corner that everyone pretends not to notice.
I met my relief at the Cosby Campground Ranger shed at dawn. He smelled like canvas and wood smoke and somebody else's camp coffee. We checked the radio. Dispatch. Repeaters, tone codes, loaded up a plastic tub with freeze-dried meals, and those 2-gallon water bladders you lash together like you're building a raft. I had a rolled tent, even though the lookout has bunks. The training packet highlighted this. In case of window failure, use tent. In parentheses. Birds. Someone had drawn a smiley face with devil horns next to it. Birds, my relief said. He looked past me toward the far line of trees, where the light comes late. That's what they write when they don't want to write wind throws logs. You'll be fine.
I want to say I believed him. I want to say I was already hearing things in the trees, those soft, positional sounds your brain assigns when you know you'll be alone later. A stepping sound you can count, a caught breath that isn't yours. But I was new. I was an extra body squeezed into a season with too few. So I said, "Thanks." Took the tubes, took the tube's rope, handles in both hands, and went up.
The climb to Low Gap is 3 notches of work. Sweat stung my eyes and carried pine on its back. Every switchback came with a cicada that cranked a winch, then fell silent like a hand over its mouth. When I hit the ridge, the wind had teeth again. Clouds pulled skeins across Mount Sterling to the east. The trail burned bright with sun where the hemlocks had died, white snags pointing their regrets at the hot sky. I passed two southbound AT hikers who lifted 2 fingers without slowing. Their calves were the color of black tea. The lead one had a small bell on his hip that chimed with a joke of gentleness.
At Camerer, the stone lookout sat quiet and solid above the ridge, the way it always does. I shouldered in a, I shouldered in a prop to the door, with boot wedge, and said a dumb hello to the empty. When you first walk into a lookout, there's always that pause where your brain expects someone to answer back. Some other ranger leaning on the Osborne firefinder, a coffee mug with lip marks, a map bristling with pins. The one had the finder centered, the glass cleaned so thoroughly, you almost doubted it the azimuth? What's that say? The
You
azimuth?
started the azimuth ring catching
Azimuth
light.
ring? Okay.
I guess so.
Hmm. Azimuth ring catching light. There was a composition book on the desk with a pencil stabbed through it and through its spiral. A page lay open. I love his description, by the way.
I do as well.
His description's really good.
Um, Here you read
Can we
this.
do those?
Yeah.
June 28th. Clear smoke report. False alarm. Fog. Bear on the ridge at dusk. He knows where you are before you know where he is. July 3rd. Lightning hit above Groghog Creek. Crew knocked down. Remember to hang your food stupidly high. We got a smart raccoon with opposable thumbs.
Yeah.
July 9th. Heard the old stories again. The thing they like to call a wild man. A joke until the laughing gets quiet. Below that, the page was torn.
I set my food under the bunk, hung my clothes from the rafters on a line. Taut line hitch. No. Is it taut? No. Taut line, right, whatever. I tied it twice. And put my spoon with the cook kit before I could lose it. Afternoon laid its length across the blue folds of ridges, while I ran my radio checks. Camera to Cosby, test 1. And camera to Foothills, repeater test 2. That clunk and hiss that sounds like a wave hitting a dock. It comforted me, like pressing down on a bruise and feeling the hurt obey.
And then it was in a it. Oh, then it was in it. A job that is mostly watching. You walk the deck. You look at the edges of things. You learn to distinguish wood smoke from fog. Heat gaze from a true column. Your eyes make circles, and the world you are responsible for lives and breaths in rings around you. Some people can't stand it. The quiet becoming audience. Every bird is judged. Every creak is a promise you don't think can be kept. Me, I've always liked the sense that if something goes wrong, I'm the first to say it out loud. I like being counted on. Sounds like Jacob, bro.
The first, dang, wait, you're not wrong. Yeah, the first night, something tapped the western windows 3 times, slow, like knuckles on a table. I was lying on the bunk with the radio low, listening to Cosby check in with the trail crew scheduled to sleep at campsite 37. The tapping came with a smell. I couldn't place it at first. A wet, feral breath that caught on the back of my tongue like ammonia and pennies. I sat up. The tapping stopped. I watched the window like it could blink. Bird, I told myself after a minute. Big dumb grouse. But I hadn't seen a grouse at 49:28 in July.
I stepped to the window and shined my headlamp. The beam bounced back old glass and the reflection of my own forehead sweat. Beyond that, the decking. Did you hear that?
What?
No, that doesn't matter. It was my kid.
Oh, yeah.
The decking planks and stone guard wall in the scrub of the mountain laurel. And beyond that, the helter shelter, black of forest that understands all your shapes and wants nothing from them at all. I wrote the smell down in the log.
There's a story in the Smokies. Yeah, you hear if you hang around the old radio guys and the Sawyers. It changes with the teller. Some use a whisper, some use a laugh, and never look you all the way in the eye when they do. It's a leftover from before anybody put numbers on hills. Before anybody nailed an oak blaze to a trunk and told that tree where the path goes. Hair and hands and face, like a man's, except worse in some small way. No one can name the same. Red eyes, some say. Yellow, say others. A sound like a barn door unpinning itself in a storm. It is the Tennessee wild man, and he doesn't belong to one country or one holler. He belongs to the moment you realize you can't tell if a step is two-legged or four, and your heart makes a hollow in your chest to hide in. That was fucking sick.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. The second day, I watched heat blur a creek valley until the laurel looked like it was seething. Dragonflies wrote bad words in the air and erased them again. I rotated the Osborne's reticle along a ring, practiced column at 110. One ridge beyond Snake Den. I wrote 100 in the log the first time and scratched it out. Nerves make liars out of the numbers. Me, not the slide of Me, not the slide of one stone riding down a slope to the rest against others. A clack, then space, then a second clack that echoed up my collar. I leaned over the east deck rail and held out my breath until I trembled. Whatever made the sound had patience. It waited until my eyes watered and my elbows hurt, and my brain began to tell me a story about nothing being wrong. Clack, clack, clack.
I didn't say who's there, because I'm not stupid, and because the words wouldn't have been for whoever made that sound, they would have been for me. When it stopped, the quiet that replaced it had weight. You know that quiet. It pulls on you like a thing with hands. I scanned the slope. Black birch, dead hemlock anniversaries, the scrollwork of the trail where it curls around sandstone. Twice I had that old mischief of sight where you think a gray trunk turns its head. 3 times I imagined dark hair where there was a shadow, and once, just once, the shape of a shoulder sliding behind Laurel as if it didn't mind being seen enough to hurry. I wrote that down too. The third day, I found the spores.
Down past the porch where the stone meets soil, something had pressed the dirt into an idea of a foot. If I were telling this to you at a bar instead of writing it into a report, I've edited 20 times. I'd cup my hands and say it like this, splayed wide, with the impression of a big toe that might not be a toe, so much as a blunt wedge. The heel didn't end where I expected it to. It bled imperceptibly?
It bled.
It bled
Im,
imperceptibly?
im,
Is
yes.
that what it says? Okay. It bled imperceptibly into the rest of the ground like weight does when it's careful. And there were more prints than one. One aimed toward the porch and stopped short of the stone. One moved along the edge and turned away.
You learn quickly what a bear looks like when it puts its front feet down, and then its hind feet into the same holes. You learn the signature of a deer's careful twist. This was neither. It was almost a person, except that my body rejected the idea, and I felt that small speed of sweat find the small of my back and sit there, unsure what to do next.
I took a photo with my phone, and the glass made the dirt disobedient. It looked like nothing. I pressed my own boot alongside for scale. The print outpaced me by length and width. You need to be a linebacker with a history of turning over your ankles to make it. It's like the guy in the one story we read. Remember that?
Yeah, fucking kid, yeah. Dude, that was crazy.
Yeah, it's funny. Back in the lookout, the composition book waited. I flipped to a fresh page and wrote slowly. July 12th. Possibly tracks below East Deck. Not bear, not cat, not human, or not sober. Stone knocking at midday, smell last night. Ammonia, metal. I know the stories. I am not drunk. I almost added, and I am not trying to make friends in my own head. But the pencil looked dumb with the sentence, and the words felt too hard.
That evening, Cosby radioed in a smoke report from a day hiker near Madron Bald, called in as a high, thin column not moving, and most likely someone's hot grill. Dispatch asked me to take a look. I stepped to the finder and spun the ring to the collar's bearing, then rotated back toward where the column would be if it were real. My finger walked the topo ridge to ridge. There, faint as a breath over a bottle mouth. Just the lightest tint in the air. If you've never done it, you don't know how your brain tries to excite itself into seeing smoke when there's only heat. But after a minute, The tint held steady, narrow. True. I radioed. Camera to Cosby. Possible column due north, northeast, about 8 miles. One ridge past Snake Den. Narrow, white, could be moisture. Copy, Camera. Will ping Greenbrier. Copy. I said. I almost mentioned the rock clacks. I did not.
Now who's struggling today, huh?
Hey! It's hard to read this word. Camera. Greenbrier. These words confuse me.
We're probably absolutely butchering that, by the way.
Yeah. No, you're not wrong about that. Yeah.
Well, I watched the column something moved in the foreground. It was nothing, then something again. A shape, in the shape of a man, half the slope closer than I wanted. It stood exactly as still as a person does when they know they will be seen if they rock forward. If a deer freezes your eye, reads it like a piece of grammar in the sentence of the wood. If a person freezes, the wood becomes a stage. This fixed itself right at the border of those two ideas and refused to belong to either. I felt my throat, remember how to close, and I said, without touching the radio, you're too close to a federal structure, and the shape, if it had a head, turned it. Oh.
Damn. There are distances in these mountains that have a moral to them. The space between you and a rattlesnake, for example, where the animal will be what it is, and you will not change that simply by wanting. The space between you and and a thing like this was not one of those. It wore motives. By the time I found the cheap bravado to lift my binoculars, it was gone. Only the laurel held the thought of its passage, those leaves that bounce once and then, with great care, bounce again. The radio hissed. Greenbrier confirms. Column near brush pile on private land. Abated. Good eyes, Camera. I said thank you and felt like a man doing ventriloquism with a full glass of water.
The night the stones came, not pebbles, stones, some big enough to sound like they had stories in them. They hit the stone guard wall below the deck and sang with the ignoble? Yeah, ignoble.
Ignoble.
Ignoble? Oh, okay.
Yes.
That ignoble note only struck objects can manage. One skittered across a deck plank and impacted the door with a thunk that shook the bolt. I turned off my light and stood with my hand on the radio, as if it were a friend's shoulder. Outside, the wind didn't move. Cicadas? Yeah, cicadas
It is.
quit. Yeah. If I had stayed still, I think it might have ended differently. If I had simply been a piece of furniture in the lookouts, memory a man shaped shadow and breathed within limits and chose to honor those limits, like a good guest. Maybe the thing would have tried. The thought would have evaporated. And I wouldn't be writing about the time kids got frisky on a ridge. But something in me, something that remembers being a boy in the dark woods with a stick you have decided is a sword, picked up the flashlight. It clicked in my hand, and I threw a cone of weak yellow at the windows. I stepped to the door. Don't, I whispered to myself. I opened it anyway.
The smell made me step back against the table. I could taste it in my eyes. There's a stink the hog farms put up sometimes when the wind drives their belly toward town. There's a stink when the creek pulls back in August and leaves what it is carrying. This was both and something sharper, like a jar left uncapped for years in a shed. The deck lay empty, then not. It's a trick of old light. Your brain pulls the slow photograph in and says there's nothing, and then it adjusts and something is there after all. A forearm against stone, a trailing hand, hair matted with leaf chaff, arm length wrong, and muscular in ways that misname themselves in the eye. The hand, okay, it was a hand. There's no other word that has fingers curled against the stone rail, toenails, not claws, clicking once as weight transferred.
Yeah.
It moved without hurry and with purpose, and it looked, which is harder to describe than it sounds. There is looked. at and then there is looked into. I say it looked into because I could feel the idea of myself 10 paces behind me where my spine meets something that isn't bone, and it seemed to examine that instead of the meat. I haul around to move it from place to place. That was beautiful. Yes, that was awesome.
You're struggling, bro.
I I did struggle, but like
No,
I
it's
struggled, but
good.
that was awesome.
It's
That was
good.
awesome. Hey, I said, failing both of us. It withdrew the hand and gave me a sound that didn't carry. No grunt, no scream. More like a breath refusing to be born. The odor lifted and fell like an animal settling. I moved backward and closed the door slow, like you do with a sleeping child.
I slept in the tent inside the lookout that night. The fly rattling against itself, the radio on my chest around 2. Something walked the roof. 1 step. 2. 3. Slow. As if mono? Yeah. Mono footed.
Mono,
Mono?
or I think.
Mono? Yeah. Mono footed. I held my breath until the tent swarmed and thought of the note in the packet. Birds. I tried to laugh. I let out a sound like a cough that someone had sat down and forgotten where. The steps stopped. The wind came back like a promise, not worth much, and I slept the way the body sleeps when it chooses you. I drop into something that has no temperature. The sixth day. Oh, not one. On the sixth day, I made a mistake. It was small. A mistake. It was as small as mistakes go. It's the scale that matters. I hiked down the spur trail to the AT. Checked the sign where some over eager weekenders like to carve hearts. I brought the tubs empty water, bladders to refill a seep. We use when the mule trains late. They have a mule?
I guess so.
It's a brown trickle this time of year, tucked under. Oh God, I don't know.
Oh, God.
I don't even.
Rhododendron. Rhododendron. Yep.
Okay,
Tucked under rhododendron and a boulder.
okay. Tucked under rhododendron and a boulder, with a face like a dead man's cheek. You lay the bladders flat and you aim the trickle with a plastic bottle you've cut in half and tell yourself you aren't wasting an hour.
I found the bladders moved when I came back up. Just a little. The kind of thing you could write off if you were in town at a picnic and a gust came and you were telling a story you wanted to keep telling. But up there, where every mouthful of water is an act of faith and planning, you pay attention. Then I saw the line. It ran from the deck, across the bare spot where visitors stand to take pictures, and down the start of the spur trail. It wasn't rope, it was bark. Someone, something, had stripped long skins from a from a poplar and braided them loosely, the way old men braid strings when they explain knots to boys who aren't listening. The braid was hung in a lazy drape from laurel stems and pinned at intervals with sticks placed like picks for a guitar you do not know to play. It formed a waist-high guide that split the air and tugged your eye along it, like a sentence your mind starts finishing without permission. I followed it 10 paces before I understood what I was doing. No, I said out loud, to a day without clouds. No, sir. I cut the braid with my pocket knife and coiled it meanly and tossed it off the slope. The forest took it with a shrug. Back inside, my spoon was gone.
I stared at the spot on the desk where I'd left it. The cook kit lid reflecting my face back at me like a bad idea. It was just a spoon, steel with a bend in the neck from some previous life. It was also the one piece of comfort I had been careful enough to control. I searched the obvious places, then the dumb ones, then the places that made me mad at myself for even thinking of them. Nothing ate at dinner with a tent steak. Washed the steak in a guilty way and put it next to the cook kit where the spoon had been, as if that could undo the part where I'd been playing with it. That evening I heard a man speak below deck. I couldn't make out words. I couldn't tell if it was English or another thing entirely. It rose and fell like a human voice rises and falls when it tells a story to itself to see how it sounds. I pressed my ear to the floorboards and felt the vibration come through bone. Not deep. Not not growled. Thin. An idea of a voice. I waited for the shape of a sentence to present itself, and when it didn't, when the cadence stuttered and found itself again, and repeated a rise that felt memorized rather than understood, the kind of fear I associated with hospitals and sirens came to sit cross-legged behind my heart, and I put its hands in my chest cavity, and wriggled its fingers around until I could taste brass. The voice stopped. The breath on the other side of the deck board did not. Damn.
That was just nice. I did not sleep that night. I sat at the finder and traced azimuths with the dead radio in my lap. Dead because the battery had died, and my spare had been left in the tub, and the tub was set just outside the door, and I could not open the door without doing something to myself I do not have a word for. There are things a person can do to prove to themselves they are still the owner of their body. You can clap, you can sing, you can slap the side of your own face. You can put your hand on your own sternum and push until you cough. I did none of these. I watched the ring spin under my finger and thought absurdly, how many men had laid hands on this circle or this glass circle before me? Eyes narrowed against smoke, hearts beating with weather instead of whatever this was. At first light I opened the door. The tub was upright. The rope handle had been retied. It was a knot. I recognized because it was a knot I tie when I am in a hurry, and I think I will fix it later, and then never do. It wasn't mine. It was mine badly attempted. 2 turns instead of 3. Difference had the taste of mockery. Down the slope, halfway into the laurel, hung the spoon.
It had been threaded through the bark braid I'd cut and thrown in. It hung like a charm, a little sun laughing to itself when the wind found it. I had the thought, sharp and single, that if I stepped down there to get it, and Laurel would close and the smell would open, I would be in a different part of the story. I stayed where I was and let the spoon hang, and I felt like I had been asked a question. I had failed even before I tried to answer. I'd made my call for relief at noon. It wasn't supposed to happen for another 4 days. There is a rhythm to these things, and you don't break it unless the break buys you something you can defend later. I used the professional voice I kept by nouns clean. Camerier to Cosby. Go ahead, Camerier. Requesting early relief. A small pause. Medical. I could hear the pen dispatch was already holding. Fatigue, I said. Hydration. Another lie prepared itself, lined up behind that one, and I didn't have to pull it because the pen noise changed. Copy. We'll send crew to the trailhead. ETA 1600. Your relief is Waller.
Waller had a scar through his eyebrow that made him look like someone you shouldn't borrow from. He laughed like an old pot. He was superstitious in the way only a man who's been right about more than he can prove will be. I breathed out and felt my chest respond like a crate that's been untied. Copy, Cosby. I'll meet Waller at the spur sign. The thing below the lookout, the thing that could tie a knot, if you gave it time and watched, made its first mistake then. Or maybe it didn't, and all of this is a drawn out moment that began a long time ago, when someone else's name, and I am only now catching up to it. It stepped out, broad chested, the way a swimmer is. Hair, a color that doesn't exist in a paint catalog, because it keeps changing with the angle you look at it. Gray, then rust, then a color the hungry sun makes when it burns through smoke. It stood between the porch and the start of the spur, and it watched me with a face that was not a face only because I didn't want it to be. It had a brow and a jaw, and those were both wrong and small, exact ways that made my brain keep correcting, then stopping, then trying again. The eyes were dark as sugar water. The structures around them twitched as if they were learning.
There's a moment they don't tell you about in the packet. A moment where your mouth wants to shape the word sir, and your hands want to bring themselves up to show emptiness, and your legs want to fold. The animal in your shakes and the keys it stole from all the buildings. You keep locked inside. Something else something else in your checks the list of laws you know and starts crossing things off with the red pencil because none of this is going to help. I lifted my hands. Okay, I said. I see you. The wild man. If that is what it was, and there are not better words, and worse ones, just this one. Tilted its head like a man pretending to be a dog for a child. The movement was rehearsed. It took a step. The print it left was as careful as a child's assignment and a pensmanship. It made a sound like a whisper, being chewed. It raised its right hand and opened it, showing me a palm cross-hatched with old scars and new. And it laughed once, a bark that never found its own echo. The radio breathed. Cosby to Camera. Waller on the way. He brings extra water for you. The head turned toward the radio as if the words had a smell.
I felt a stupidity then that I have replayed so many times my skull has divots in it where the replay wheels ride. I felt protective of the radio, of the finder, of the stone itself, and all those men in the 30s who placed these rocks like sentences you want to say correctly forever. I stepped forward, and the wild man flowed back a half step, and the relationship between us shifted from 2 points on a map to a line with tension in it. One more step, and I would be off the porch. One more after that, and I would be on the dirt. One more after that, and I would be in the story you tell only if you have nothing left to keep. The wild man made a sound then that lives under all the other sounds I will hear until I die. It wasn't volume. It wasn't even threat. It was a correction. It told me without words and with perfect clarity that I had mistaken who was moving who. I stopped. The head turned again. Slow. Tasting the air for Waller, maybe, or for the idea of Waller, or for the different flavor of a man who has seen enough. He has stopped pretending he hasn't.
I went back inside. I closed the door. I sat on the floor with my back to the woods and my hands on my knees, like a child told to breathe. Outside, the wild man walked the deck. The boards talked softly under its weight. It paused at the windows, each in turn, as if the lookout were a museum. It had paid to enter and it would not be cheated. At the north window it leaned close enough that I could hear its breath find the old caulking and turn it sweet and rotten. At the east window it put something, forehead, softly to the glass and rested it there for the count of 5. When the sound of it moved to the door, I put my hand flat against the wood and felt heat like a stove through winter gloves. It stood there a long minute, and then it did something that took parts of me I did not know you could take. It knocked 3 times, slow, a rhythm I knew from the first night, and which now changed permanently from the question to certainty. Then I stepped away, and when it did, I heard stones clack once, twice, 3 times, slow. And something in the sound said, "Wait." I waited. Waller called up the spur at 4:17 p.m. My watch said so. His voice carried like an easy promise. "Ho, Camerier, you up?" "Yes." "Oh, you want to do this one?"
Yeah. Yes, I said, and the word cracked in the middle like an egg. He came up with a grin and 2 red jugs, and a look that said I was not the first man to look like this. He set the jugs down, let out a breath through his nose, and turned his head in that birdish way he has. "You smell that?" he said. I said yes. He walked the deck slow. He bent once to look at the stone wall, then again to look at the print I hadn't known I had kept pristine. He ran a thumb along the window sash where something had left a fine brown smear that you could call sap if you wanted an easy afternoon. "How long?" he said. "Days," I said. He nodded as if he had just put down a heavy bucket. He walked to the finder and laid his palm gently on the glass ring. The touch was not superstitious exactly. It was respect shaped by years. "We're leaving on time," he said. We won't do it in a hurry, and we won't do it slow. He smiled without mirth, and we won't look back unless we have to. He stepped to the door, and then, God bless him, he opened it, with the same easy motion he always uses, as if nothing in the world has changed, because if it you don't want to tell it that. I'm struggling. We went down we went down the spur, and the wild man came with us. Yeah.
Not not on the trail. Not in any way that would make a straightforward story if I stayed in the trees on the downhill side, and it moved parallel a shade for each of us. Its progress marked not by itself, but by what the forest did in its wake. A slow bounce of laurel leaves, a bird lifting and refusing to call, a dry rattle of something that might be bones strung on the bark if you believed you were going to die and needed the world to be dramatic about it. Twice I made the mistake of trying to place it exactly, and twice Waller touched my shoulder. That tap a coach uses. Don't reach for the ball when you should be moving your feet.
At the AT junction, he stopped and looked at the sign, like it might say something new if he looked kindly enough. Then he turned downhill toward Low Gap, with a cheerfulness he did not feel, and I followed. And the wild man, who does not care about signs except the ones it makes, went with us. When we reached the first switchback cut into the slope, where the bench is wide enough for 3 men to walk abreast, we heard rocks move in the gully below. Not tumble place. A cairn made with care. Waller did not look. He said instead a sentence that I have thought a lot about since, and has nothing in it except what it says. We're not the first to go down while something comes along. He meant in history. He meant in afternoons. He meant in the lives you live in your head when the body is busy.
At the last 100 yards before the low gap, where you begin to hear human voices again, children's complaint and a dog's scold and the slap of someone's palm on a truck bed. The smell lifted as if a line had been crossed. The hill behind us held its breath, and then it let it out, and with it went a pressure I hadn't known was riding my sinuses?
Sinuses.
Sinuses. Jesus. Sinuses. My body did the thing it does after a fever breaks. It discovered thirst with an anger that was almost joy. At the truck, Waller slung the water into the bed and handed me a bottle. Don't tell them, he said, nodding toward the campground, meeting the families and the men in their hats who say sir. To us with a practiced drawl. Tell me. Tell the radio. Tell the book. That way it's true without being useful to folks who will only want the part where it has teeth.
I told him in fewer words than this, in the truck while the air conditioner made a sound like the old bluegill pond at my grandfather's place when you tossed feed and the fish all rose at once, greedy and flat. We drove to the shed. He signed me out. He said I'd done fine. He meant it. He walked me to my car because he knows about doors and how they feel after you've been looked at through one. At home, days later, I unpacked slow. The world had edges again. The shower made the good sound when it hits the back of your neck, and you put your head against the tile and remember that you used to believe in the walls. I emptied the plastic tub onto my kitchen table. The tub's rope handles still wore that two-turn knot. The tent stake was in there, too. It still smelled faintly like scorched ramen water from the night I played it off as a spoon. When I reached the cook kit, I found my spoon.
It had fused to the bottom of the pot. I must have kicked it into the fire my first night. No, my second. And I fished it out, and I set it down and planned to scrub it proper and then forgot like boys forgot to write their grandmothers, and then convinced myself I had been taken to make the story better. The steel had gone dull and blued, and then welded itself to the thin aluminum like a silver leaf pressed to a cheap coin. I held it in the light and laughed. once and felt tears rise, and then I laughed again, because that was the correct response, ridiculous as it was. On the back of the composition book, because I brought it home without asking, the Waller would have rolled his eyes as I said, "Just bring it back next run. I wrote this because the brain likes to have forms, and I am no different."
July 21st. Relief complete. Possible wild man encounter. Rock knocks, smell, tracks, vocalization mimicry, structured deck contact, window contact, visual at 27 meters, daylight, no precip. The object demonstrated curiosity, patience, a sense of rehearsal. No overt aggression unless you call being rearranged aggression, which I do. It was nearly midnight when I finished. I turned off the kitchen light and went to my small bedroom and lay on sheets that smelled like the detergent aisle at the store where the checker says, "You take care now," in a way that makes you believe her. The street outside my window had one working lamp, and it painted a single blade of brightness across my closet door. I counted my breaths to 13 and backed down. Something an old SAR guy taught me when the questions won't stop asking. At 1:13 a.m., my phone buzzed.
I didn't pick it up. No good things call at 1:13. It buzzed again at 1:14. A little longer, like a friend trying to decide if they should insist. I let it go. In the morning, I listened to the voicemails. The first was a static with words in it. "If you're the kind of person who finds faces in wood grain." The second was a breath talking sound, the intake that precedes speech and never finds it. The third was stones, three, clacks, slow. I could have deleted it. Instead, I saved it, and I have listened to it enough now that I can tell myself I hear laurel leaves moving after the second clack. That is either true or it is a mercy I give myself. I went back because that is what the job asks, and because some part of me that is older than I am didn't. Some part of me that is older than I am didn't want to finish in the middle of the sentence. The second hitch was a rain slick in Tamar. The air smelled washed. Camerier felt like a ship in a bottle again. I set my things down. I straightened the finder. I checked the deck for prints and for the line of bark that might be strung to lead me where I shouldn't go, and for the smell that now divides my life into before and after nothing. In the notebook, Weller had left a note in his half print.
July 27th. Fog thick as milk. Saw nothing. Heard less. You're okay up here. He knows your name now. Don't let that sentence trick you. W. That night, I slept in the bunk, and not in the tent. Rain trickled the glass windows in the rhythm of a clock that never has to be wound. The wind came up at 2, and I woke and lay with my hands crossed over my chest, like a boy at church. I listened, and I waited for a step, a breath, a clack. What I got was silence, broken by a whip-poor will, and the long sigh of a tree deciding to give up on a limb it had been pretending wasn't dead. I went back to sleep with a smile I did not own. In the morning, on the east deck, pinned under a small rock with care, lay my spoon, separated from the pot, clean, a bend in its neck where it had always had a bend. Testimony to the fact of itself, it caught the sun and flashed the way metal does when it means to tell you it can still choose who to give your face back to. I stood there with the rain gutters chiming and the smell of wet stone and the old fall of leaves in a world that had discovered law again. I put the spoon inside the cook kit and closed the lid and set it on the table. I put my hand on the finder. I breathed. I did my job.
Sometimes after, sometimes after late at night in my apartment, there's a sound at the edge of hearing. A roll of something small across something big. An insect caught in a sill. A neighbor's late plates set onto a quarter with care. It is nothing. It is not a message. It is the world being itself while I am myself inside it. But sometimes, not often, just enough, I will put the phone to my ear and play those three clacks in the dark, and will think about the way the bark braid pulled at the air, insisting my eye follow, and I will hold the knowledge that I did not follow, the way you hold a rail in the stairwell after nearly falling, and then I sleep. He is out there still, male or not. He is simply a convenience, a word with a handle. He is out there when the stone's warm and cool, when the laurel drops in old leaves, when the CC's careful work interlocks damp in a fog so thick you can chew it. He is not a bear. He is not a man. He is something that wants you to know it could be both in the places the map is thin. And when the ridge burns again, and it will, because the sky believes it in matches, he will stand where smoke makes the same column as a lie, and he will watch. He will wait, and if you knock, he will answer. 3 times, slow, with patience. It took him the long way to earn.
That was good.
That was real good. Yeah,
I really like that.
yeah, that was.
I still find it kind of funny how he called him though.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I really enjoyed that. The description was really
I
really good. Like it really like even though like we don't get me wrong, we stumble and stuff, but like
we
it did
struggled.
really roll off the tongue a lot of it.
Yeah, it was really nice, and a lot of the words there was like smart words in there. But like they were used in like a way that you could still kind of like understand what they meant.
Yeah, he didn't put like a bunch of like massive words to sound make the story sound more like intelligent, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like he
he
just
used them when they were needed.
yeah, like all it was all like clear and concise. Everything was tight. Everything was like snappy. Like it was really good. I really enjoyed that. And like it had a lot of moments where you're like questioning what the creature is and like wondering what it's doing. I think that's kind of the point is like you're supposed to be left wondering what it was in a way.
Yeah, the description of the creature was really good. Like
Yeah.
the color, like hold on, I'm gonna try and find it. He said it was like gray, and then like it was a mixture of colors of like orange and like brown, like the sun through smoke or something. I thought that was really cool.
I'm gonna have to ask him now what the creature is because
I think it's just like not like Bigfoot, but I think it's like a monkey man, like the wild man. I think it's like something like that.
I'm thinking something like that, but like I don't know. I don't know. It was really cool. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, it was good.
But yeah, we're gonna keep doing stories from here, and we're gonna keep reaching out to people and seeing uh, who we can find and what who wants us to read what. If you are a writer listening to this, or you made it to the end here, please email us or leave a comment or whatever, and just get in contact with us, and we'll read your stuff, man. Like we're open to anything here.
Yep, we'll we'll be reading lots more to come.
Anyway,
Goodbye.
goodbye.